Welcome to Politica Show on Lions Wire. Today's political analysis is going to be provided by, as always, Ilya Levkov. Ilya, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And today is December 2nd. And Biden has a bit more than 1 month left in office. And there are some vivid activities going on, especially around his son and many other things. So perhaps we can shed light on what's going on with Biden. Also, we are looking at Syria and Russia conflict. There is, I think, Aleppo is on fire, and we'd like to talk about that as well. Now, Ilya, what are your thoughts on Biden?
And Biden. Well, we'll have two parts of Biden. His so-called amnesty to his son and historical analysis, because we had many interesting similar acts, but they are still very, very different from another. The second one, we have another act of Biden, which I don't think we covered, and this is his changing of his position to provide Ukrainians with distance modern flying rockets. Of course, all rockets are flying. In this case, rocket is a rocket, and what we call the wing rocket with wings, as we call it, the other, which is directed.
Cruise missile.
And those missiles, so he agreed in the last 2 months to give them, and the meaning of this. And the third thing is I would like to talk about the Arab. I said it 2 weeks ago, said the peace agreement with Hezbollah will last a day or two. I said it 2 weeks ago, and we will go a little bit into the nitty-gritty. Why did they do it? Who did they try to test? How Israel responded, and all the variation to this. So this is the scope of our conversation this evening. Now, Biden's that is pardon practically has no parallel in history, American history, for several reasons. One is the president pardon his son. It's never happened that the president pardons his son. It's a family affair. So this was unusual and unique in American history because all other pardons, we can go into this a little bit briefly, but they never involved a family member. Another thing which makes a pardon unique is that usually the pardon is given, usually, in some cases it was not, after the trial, the person is guilty, he set a certain period of time in a prison, and thereafter the remaining of it is being pardoned. There are very few cases where we know in American history that the pardon was given before the verdict, and the extent of it, there are certain things we will see now that people give pardon, presidents give pardons, and thereafter they.
What does it even mean if the pardon is given without verdict? Is there any point of going through to get the verdict?
Exactly.
How does that work?
Exactly. So we're talking here as the pardon received the closest of family man. But there were others, let's say, also give the extent of deeds or extent of time, the stipulation. I pardon you for such and such deed, or I pardon you for deeds that you made in a particular circumstances, But here we have actually 11 years, because here it says that offenses against the United States, I read you, which Hunter has committed or may have committed, taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 through December 1st, 2024. If the 24 is kind of also before the trial and the date of the trial about the possession of the gun and false registration, so it is of meaning that all is included. Also important, the beginning of it, and it was January 1st, 2014. And this is when Hunter became the member of the board of Burisma. Do you understand? So those dates are not simply naked dates, but they are connected to facts that were violations that when they began with Burisma and all that happened in between. Let's say if somebody will find that Hunter Biden had some activity before the first date, and let's say it was with Kazakh or Romanians, Chinese, so this is not covered. But they were careful to include the most, that is 11 years of his activity, which is also says, unusual. That is never been said before, such thing. Now, congressional Republicans could have, would have dug a little bit deep, but it's not worthwhile. There's another element. In a way, Trump did not promise, but said that before his term expires, he will pardon the entire Biden family, including President Biden. However, Biden seems to me was not sure. Will it happen or not? And what if he suddenly says very negative against Trump and Trump get upset? But things can happen, as I say.
Yeah.
So in this particular case, this what moved Biden to do it now, despite everything, but to do enough and all-encompassing. It's very, very one of those reports I told you. Now, a little bit short detour, what has happened, let's say, with Richard Nixon. As you know, Gerald Ford, in a way, pardoned. I remember those days vividly now. Why did he do it? Very, very many Republicans and Democrats were upset. Why did he pardon him instantly, you understand, when he left? Because there was no verdict, there was no trial yet, you understand? It was still in the Congress itself. Procedures were primarily by Republicans, because Republicans decided that they have to unload Nixon in order not to have a heavy burden. And here we have very interesting things that is period that he committed is from 1969 to 74. So the period is of 5 years that were committed because there were other things that I don't want to go into this. He was entire political life of Nixon. Many wanted to make him responsible for this. As a matter of fact, I remember a cartoon, black woman, skinny, with looks like in the 9 months of pregnancy, visible, and under it was a sign, Nixon did it.
Nixon the father.
Yeah,
Okay.
those were the days. So therefore, that was only related, includes the crimes of Watergate, you see. What happened in Watergate, Nixon didn't know about this, but he wanted to defend. He was dragged, he wanted to defend his loyal Edelman and Handelman. So they were called the two Germans, you know. And therefore, he wanted to assure that they will not happen, and he became involved in defending them. But he so-called lied. Another thing was this secretary claims that he inadvertently bent down and tried to push the button on a German recorder, the Uher, and erased inadvertently 18 minutes. And what was on those 18 minutes? In any case, those were also very, very joyful days when the entire students, academia, and all that thing were handling that thing. Interesting happened now a little bit, not son and not brother, by a half a brother. Once upon a time was also pardoned by the president. This was a half brother by the name of Billy Carter, and he was pardoned by Jimmy Carter. Now, he was pardoned because, besides this, that he dodged the Vietnam War draft between these, and he also dealt with the distribution of narcotics. So this was the most two claims historical. Family, where family was involved. Benjamin Harrison did something similar to give a blanket. So in this case, it was a blanket for Mormon polygamists. That is, he said he pardons all the members of the church of the later day of saints, said they had several wives. But he did so in 1893, where cohabitation, the unlawful, they abstained from prohibited cohabitation in 1890. As a matter of fact, a grandfather of that, who was later, is from Utah, tall, lanky senator, was a senator, ran against Obama in 2012.
Romney?
Romney. His name is always escapes me. I don't know what to do. His grandfather, where rumors said he was a polygamist, but he lived mostly in Mexico, so, but now, this kind of thing. Another big, Andrew Jackson, as you know, the president that followed the death of Abraham Lincoln, pardoned, issued individual pardon to 13,000 Confederate soldiers after the Civil War. That is, they were not to be challenged, so they did something wrong during the war, and because they were, as you know, they being trying to retain the slavery in the United States. The same thing, George Washington by himself also landed, was called Whiskey Rebellion, once again. So the next so-called pardon in history that is of interesting is it took place by George H.W. Bush, whose memoirs I published once upon a time. It's before the election of 1988, by the way. And it included the former, not only some figures, but among them was Caspar Weinberger, Defense Secretary of the United States. He had various things that was accused. It never came to the accusation and a verdict, but there were some rumors and accusations, something, and therefore he was pardoned. I can tell you actually an interesting thing. He was a critic of Israel, and in one of his only one visit when he came to an air base, they asked him, "Would you please plant a tree?" And he planted a small tree in the entrance of this barrack, military barrack. And then they went for a lunch. And at the end of the lunch, he was given a present. It was wrapped. It was by I don't know, 2 feet by 3 feet, something like that. And when he unwrapped it, he saw his photograph planting the tree. You understand? So he was very, very taken by that so-called tree. In those days, it was in the 80s. Yeah? In those days, it was not a simple thing to photograph and develop this size of picture instantly within an hour. So I was told by the relative of mine who was present, as it says, and I asked him, "Tell me, but you took a chance when you had a photographer who took this." He says, "Don't worry, we had 2 photographers who took photos just to impress him." You understand?
Got it.
What kind of hard nuts are the Israelis?
Let me ask you this, Ilya. Is it possible? So now that Biden gave pardon to his son, is it possible for Trump to legally revoke that pardon?
But nobody will exactly. They, as you know, the cases are being closed, and 2 cases were closed with there are 2 forms to close the case. One is to abstain with or without. Once forgot the word. Just a moment. Let me. In any case, so Trump was in a way not pardoned, but the case was delayed without prejudice. That is, that you can renew the case after he finishes his presidential term in 4 years. So in case of Trump, what happened now said he would be or could be actually. So in a way, he can pardon himself. He can pardon himself to those who claim so many cases were against him, and it was so clear that it was truly because Trump was Trump, because he was a president, candidate to the presidency, president, and all that thing. So this is a by the way, the next was a Flynn. Flynn was practically had to be my author or co-author. He just published in December 2016 his book about terrorism, and I was negotiating with a co-author who is my friend, old friend, 50 years, Michael Ledin. Michael Ledin is a analyst specializing in terrorism, specializing in Italian terrorism. He was the first expert in the State Department in 1980, as you remember, under the Secretary of Al Haig, General Al Haig. And you remember Al Haig a little bit caused himself a trouble when Reagan was shot several months later into his, in April or March 1981, he said, I am in charge. Yes, he is number 4 in charge if something happened to the president. The first one would be in charge, it's the vice president. The next one will be the Speaker of the House. Then, after the Speaker of the House, will be the Secretary of State, because this was the first office that was established to be the Secretary of State.
Okay.
And he said, I am in charge, and some people felt that he demanded too much. It's during the when Reagan was shot and was on his way to a hospital, you understand? So, in any case, back to pardoning Flynn, which was done by President Trump. All right, listen, I will not go into this because it's enough on that issue.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would like to deal with the Biden, it's a Biden's change of mind. You see, which I some 2 weeks ago suspected that there was a maybe, usually I don't deal with such issues with suspicions and hunch, but maybe it was issue of issue that Biden maybe decided to toss an easy ball, softball or volleyball, it's a kind of. So he extended to Ukraine those those rockets with a long distance, which are closing to 3 or even over 300 kilometers.
I think he gave permission. It's more like Ukraine already had these Atacams
Yes,
missiles, but he gave permission to use it in depth in Russia.
It's not permission. It was to make them. They could not, because 130 kilometers, they're still actually, they cannot reach the bridge, nor they can reach only those in the territory of Ukraine, which was so-called absorbed by the Russians, but not above it. That is not to shoot into Russian territory, or to shoot in the military soldiers that are beyond that line, or to shoot even against those troop concentrations that are still in Russia, and the airfield from which other rockets are being fired at Ukraine.
Yeah.
So this was mine kind of a suspicion, of course, for which I didn't have any factual things to support it with. So what had happened there, I actually forgot to mention another family connection that did, and this was by a Trump pardon Charles Kushner. Charles Kushner is the father of the Jared Kushner, and therefore he was sitting for 2 years for manipulation. Rather, he is also in real estate, and he is a tough cookie, and I don't want to go into details, but in any case, he was sentenced by court to 2 years. I think he said some 14 months, and then Donald Trump pardoned him. So it was another in-law, but not the direct member of the family. Simply, I forgot to mention this. By the way, that Charles Kushner, several days ago, was appointed by President Trump to be the U.S. ambassador in France. So they have peace in the family, or all in the family. Depends how we want to look at it. So that's what I would go talk about this. So now back to Biden's and the rockets. Uh, I thought so because Trump, of course, cannot fulfill what he promised. In 2 days, he will make a peace between Russia and
And
Ukraine.
Ukraine, yeah, that sounds
Now,
totally impossible.
now Ukraine got from United States a long distance rocket, and they could say, hey, we're given this in order to utilize it. So they can utilize it in the next month and a half. And then Trump comes and meeting with Putin. Well, I didn't promise to you personally. Those were my plans. And I talked about this to Americans, not to Russians. And besides this, as you know, Biden authorized the those long distance rockets, and now the Ukrainians used it. So we have a new reality. You understand? It can be manipulated by Trump versus Russia because Russia now at all. Before we will now talk about the Syrian, but this is kind of a continuation of what happening now in Syria, and to what extent this might be to disadvantage of Russia to insist on those realities. Let's say if Ukrainians will shoot a little bit into Russia. That's the point, because he would say he cannot stop it. It was given by my predecessor, and so easy it cannot be denied. Now, about what is happening uh, in Syria. I cannot find on my desk, but I have it. This book by a fellow Lebanese, his name was Fuad Ajami, and he was kind of an expert, and his articles appeared on the regular in the Wall Street Journal. But it happened when he, from becoming kind of a classical pro-Arab, uh, became so-called the conservative. He joined the American conservative movement, and I have somewhere even a video clip where he debates an Israeli student who presented the Israeli side. The film was somewhere in the late 70s, I would say, somewhere in the late 70s, and the name of the Israeli student was Itai. For some reason, this name was used then temporarily by no other than Benjamin Netanyahu. Later on, when this Fuad Ajami became a conservative, they became friends, Jami and Benjamin Netanyahu. He published the book, The Arab Spring, and it's and why it didn't work, you see. I'm coming now to once again, why nothing happened, political results from that Arab Spring that was 2011, 2012, 2013 to 14. Still people hope that something will happen. So first of all, how it started, I'll tell you, and then why it didn't work. It started because the kids in Syria were pasting at night various anti posters against Assad. When they pasted, so the authorities caught them, beat them, put them in a prison. In any case, this caused then the attention of their parents, and their parents became kind of the opponents of this particular regime, which relies upon one called Hamula, or tribe, is Alawite, and actually they come from this northern place which was now assaulted. Nowadays, the people that assaulted, they are the Islamists, the radical Islamists who would like to topple him. And then, of course, because Russia was received to have a naval port in northern Syria and also airport for um, Russian airplanes. So Russians failed to defend this regime. Thus, Russians even once again entered and helped Assad to crush this this movement. But this movement, once again, it's a radical movement. So, of course, compared to them, Assad looks like a Westerner. He dressed like Westerner. He never dressed in the Arabic dress of Saudi Arabia or others. He's a Westerner. He's an eye doctor. Actually, his profession was an eye doctor.
He's an eye doctor. I think got educated in London, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
In UK.
Correct.
Yeah.
But he was an optometrician or whatever, eye doctor. And his older son was killed in an accident, a brother, not a son. And therefore, he was in a way half prepared, assumed this mantle of the president of Syria and succeeded for numerous years, as we know, to balance this very, very shaky regime. Now, the point that we have to deal with this is what would be now the situation. We have a new triangle. We have a triangle of Turkey, Syria, and Hezbollah, because for numerous reasons. Hezbollah, as you know, Israel bombed many, many roads through which Iran sent to Iraq, from Iraq to Syria, and thereafter they crossed the border into Lebanon and provided weapons to Hezbollah. Now, most of those points have been bombed already, but even there were bombed some two aerodromes where special military.
Airfields.
Say it again?
Airfields.
Airfields, what's the name? Yes, airfields where they deliver the weapons to Hezbollah, and then on trucks they would cross the border from Syria to Lebanon. So it also was not a kind of a. Syria wanted to, of course, to reinforce Hezbollah in the general, their general position of being anti-Israelis, and of course those who acquired the Golan Heights and all that stuff. Now, what happened thereafter, we have now the following situation. We have those radical Islamists, in a way, they are being supported by Hezbollah. They're being supported by Iran, and somehow somebody doesn't like this situation. This situation is, of course, against the interest of Turkey, because Turkey wants to be the regional, unquestionable leader. Now, under those circumstances, they try to do what is of interest to Turkey. And Syria and Turkey together agreed that there will be no Kurdish state. This what unites those two countries more than anything else. So they are on this side of the issue. Now, on the other hand, Israel that could have done something, promised not to do because Biden, as you know, asked them and Israelis agreed 2 weeks ago that there is a ceasefire. The ceasefire for 60 days, which ends on January the 20th. Just a coincidence. So this when the Trump will enter the White House. So we have this kind of a shaky situation when everybody knows their limits and then they still try to do something. I.e., Israel news that this sulha in Arabic, this kind of a temporary ceasefire, it's called sulha, uh, will will not live even in 2 days, as I stated some 2 weeks ago. And indeed, however, this is the beginning of the equation because it's very difficult. You see, uh, you need some support if you suddenly punish. So Israel punished local people. There, Hezbollah, there were 6, 8 were killed near the border. They came, they were armed. So the point was, without any question, shoot upon visibility and all that shoot. Of course, shoot immediately also reply to each rocket which Hezbollah sends toward Israel. However, it's easier to say because you don't see, you don't have an automatic public support for Israel when everything is evident that they are responding to the terms that Hezbollah agree, i.e., if they violate them, immediately will be a response. They agreed and signed this paper. But the problem is that United States published this paper as well. And therefore, Israel cannot get now into friction in the remaining months and a half with with the with the Biden administration because several items, military items, are in the pipeline or on their way to Israel. And it will be simply, somebody might sabotage it later on or blame Israel because they don't see who shot the first and what was the response and was the response no equal to this or balanced or not balanced. All those matters that are secondary. So therefore, it was understood that there will be some, Israel will have to accept the burden and even the victims. Yeah, when we have the victims, Israel replies, to that.
Yeah.
But still, that is, as such, this Hudna is not working, and it was known, it was in DNA of the Middle East and in Arab societies. Therefore, Israel on the side to take it easy and not to respond on everything will try, Israel will try to sustain it as agreed upon, but in general, they're in disadvantage. The same thing actually was parallel, was contemplated immediately when the Gaza and Hamas cross over, and even the Israeli expert, actually one of them is an expert on Iran, Ocean, and he said if Israel would have crossed the border with Gaza and killed 50,000 people, nobody would have responded. On the next day, but a week later, 2 weeks later, it would be considered as a crime against humanity. You understand? It's a kind of a invisible line of ethics that limits Israel to come with such a response. Today, Israel, when they trying to clean the terrorist nets and all that thing, even when they kill one or two, suddenly they said, Israel stresses the war. So the only element that I would like to add is about the essence of that Arab Spring, which was, you would not believe, it was done by the in Tahrir Square sexual harassment. At least two journalists were raped in a crowd, in a gang rape in a crowd. One was the American Lara Logan, and the other one from South Africa, Dutch actually, who was in South African, and she was also all in plenty of harassment. And total harassment in public during the demonstration was 63 women. Why this happened? Because as some of their religious leaders said that women have not to be in public, and actually those who wanted to come and be active in that thing, in a way, they wanted to be raped. This is a perception of the Arab leaders at that point. On the other hand, on the other hand, the proportion, some way here, is they said, why are we doing it? They open said, we are revolutionaries. And as you know, in the revolution, there are winners and victims. Therefore, it's allowed. This is the Arab position of those people who were promoting the Arab Spring. Who knows? Maybe it's very good that not much happened in this Arab Spring, because Arab women would have suffered much, much more. In the parliament of Egypt, there are out of 498, let me see, 498, I'm correct, only 8 women, only 8 members are women. That is 498 total, and eight only women that were from the Brotherhood Party. This was the Brotherhood Party that allied. And therefore, they said, here I said this, Ahmad Mahmoud Abdullah, he said, quote, they have no shame and they want to be raped. This how it was perceived, that those who fought for the Arab Spring, Arab democracy so-called, perceived their own women, not to mention from other countries. I would say on this note.
Yeah, we can wrap up today.
Oh, pardon?
We can wrap up today on this note.
Yeah, on this note we can part, and we'll be following the rest development.